Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding. Today we're at one of my favorite places on Earth, which is Whitefish Point in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And today we're looking for a very special bird that breeds in this area, and that would be the Piping Plover. Now this bird is going to be a plover that's got that dark band, but it's also got that very pale back, little orange bill, and should be one that we have a pretty decent chance at, assuming that they are already here. It is still the migration season this far north, even though it is getting towards the end of May, and so there should be plenty of migrants around as well. So Whitefish Point is right on the shore of Lake Superior. You can see the lighthouse there. We'll start out on the beach looking for shorebirds and water birds, doing a little lake watching, and then we'll move into the forest where we'll look for a lot of songbird migrants and that sort of thing. So should be a nice mix of water birds, shorebirds, and songbirds, so should be a pretty good morning. Now, I picked Piping Plover as the target bird today, but really one of the coolest things here at Whitefish Point is the blue jays. It just didn't feel quite right for blue jay to be the target bird, seeing as they're a relatively common bird, but they are definitely a star here at this place because you get these absolutely massive flocks. Whitefish Point is what we call a migrant trap, which it's a peninsula that sticks sort of north into the lake. So a lot of the birds that are following the lakeshore, hoping to get past and migrate into Canada, end up sort of trapped here, funneled into that point. And so you get big concentrations of birds like those blue jays. You also have a lot of nice resident birds like this hairy woodpecker. You can tell it's a hairy woodpecker. It's got that real long bill, bigger proportions than a downy. Got a sparrow, and it looks like a white-crowned sparrow, which we saw on the last bird walk that we did together. You can hear a blue jay there doing a broad-winged hawk imitation. Blue jays will do hawk imitations from time to time. Red-tailed hawk and red-shouldered hawk are probably the two most common imitations that they do, but you do hear broad-winged hawk and occasionally even Cooper's hawk every once in a while. Here we have those blue jays still flying over. So they're heading towards the lakeshore with the intention of going across to Canada, but they don't really like crossing the water. And so a lot of times they'll start going out a little bit, and then they'll end up coming back and circling around the point and circling around the point, trying to figure out exactly where they want to go. And so you get these big swirling flocks of blue jays like that. And sometimes when they drop down like that, you can hear the whoosh of their wings. That's a really sort of magical thing if you're down on the ground watching them. But yeah, these blue jay flocks are really impressive, and there they take off again. Pretty confused on what they want to do, but eventually they'll sort of figure it out and get north into Canada. Sometimes they cross the lake, sometimes they go around. Oh, and here's two other really nice sort of northwoods birds, evening grosbeaks. If you didn't hear them calling, I don't know that you'd be able to tell what those two birds are flying there amongst the blue jays, but the call really helps. But that's a bird that's definitely around, so hopefully we'll have another chance at that one. Hopefully we get one perched. That'll be a little easier to see than them just sort of whipping through. But alright, let's get started here with our walk, and we'll go around here to the bird feeders. The main thing we're going to be looking for here is actually Eurasian tree sparrow. Seems like mostly blue jays at the feeder right now, but that is a bird that we could definitely get here. Although they were here before, they started showing up at about 2013 and never left, so even though they're more of a bird that I typically think of as being around the St. Louis area, there seems to be a little population here now, and hopefully we'll be able to pick one out in these bushes. There's a chickadee there, but here we go. Here is a Eurasian tree sparrow coming into the feeder. First thing in the morning, they're pretty reliable here, so I thought we had a pretty good chance. But they're kind of a neat little sparrow. When they first showed up, I was up here, and our friends up here told us that they had been coming into the feeders, and on their text, it autocorrected to Elysian tree spirit. which I think I like a little bit better. And here we have a nice rose-breasted grosbeak at the feeder. That's a bird that we heard last time, but we didn't see, so it's nice to get a good look at him. And there goes a big flock of Hudsonian whimbrels flying over. Quite big shorebirds. You could hear all the chickadees really react there to something doing their alarm call, so it's possible they thought those big shorebirds might be a predator, but I don't think they have anything to worry about there. And there goes more blue jays. Apart from being a place that I really enjoy coming and bird watching, especially in the spring and fall, the Whitefish Point also holds a special place in my heart because it is actually a place that I did bird research before. I have worked a few seasons here working on the owl research program that is currently being run by the Friends of Whitefish Point. And so I've spent a lot of time in these woods, more in the night than during the day, to be honest. But the day is also very fun, especially on these spring mornings with all these blue jays and with the chance at finding a piping plover. But yeah, like the Manassas battlefield that we visited earlier, this is a place I've worked before and that I really enjoy. And here we have a warbler, and it looks like an orange-crowned warbler, which is a new one for us here on Virtual Birding. It's a little bit similar to the Tennessee warbler, but you can see it's got that yellow undertail coverts that the Tennessee wouldn't have, and it essentially doesn't have any markings at all. I don't remember exactly who said it, but one of the sort of big famous birders once said that the most distinguishing feature of an orange-crowned warbler is that it has no distinguishing features at all, and I think that's pretty accurate to that bird. But alright, we're now on the coastline, so we'll start looking for shorebirds and waterbirds. We'll end up walking around the point to our right, but let's check out here to the left first, see if there's anything out here. It looks like some gulls that appear a little bit on the smaller side, so it look like ring-billed gulls. On a few of them you can even see the ring on the bill. But I think I saw some ducks over here, and it'll be worth checking the beach to see if the piping plovers are here. Usually the piping plovers are on the other side of the point. In fact, I find more shorebirds over on the other side of the point than this side. But every once in a while you do get something, so it's definitely worth a check. I see a couple red-breasted mergansers hiding in there, but it doesn't look like any shorebirds on the beach. So we will keep an eye out on the lake, and there goes a couple birds flying by. Those are white-winged scoters, but I will say, if you didn't get it from that video, I don't blame you. I actually couldn't tell in real time what those were. I could tell they looked like big sea ducks, so I figured probably a scoter of some kind, but it wasn't until I sort of zoomed in on the video later that I was able to tell it's white wings. But hopefully we'll get a closer look at them, and hopefully quite a few other birds flying by. Here looks like something now. And more white-winged scoters. A little bit easier to tell on these ones, but not too much more. They feel like every once in a while, especially as they get with that bluer background, you can catch a little bit of white in their wings. But yeah, that should be a bird that we see a few of, so hopefully there will be a couple more. Got our blue jays have made it out to the point, it looks like. Looks like they might attempt a crossing, so we'll wish them luck on their way to Canada. I think there's a decent chance they might not actually make it all the way there and will come back, but they're gonna at least try, so we'll see what they do. But until then, got a couple more ducks coming through. And these look like long-tailed ducks. If you caught one, they were a little more parallel to us. You can see those really long tails. And although you can't get a ton of detail on them with the light being what it is, if you can see that long tail like you can see now, then there's nothing really else that looks like that. So long-tailed duck. Pretty easy. Another nice migrant, and one that I don't see every time, so nice thing to pick up as we walk along here. So on this side of the point, I often get more ducks and that sort of thing flying by. It's a little less sheltered out here, and so it's a good spot for them. And here's some nice white-winged scoters. I actually was intending to look at that gull, but these ones are so close, and you can really see the white wings on them, and so I decided to look at that instead. Hopefully we'll catch up with those gulls a little later. But yeah, big chunky duck, the scoters, and the only one with white wings is the white-winged scoter, so pretty easy ID. But yeah, I expect to see a lot of ducks and loons and that sort of thing on this side, hopefully maybe even a redneck grebe or two, and then once we get around the point, then that's usually where I see more shorebirds and that sort of thing. Although you can get shorebirds on both sides and ducks on both sides, so we'll see what we find. Got something else coming here. Maybe that's that gull we saw earlier. And these look like American herring gulls. They're a lot bigger and bulkier than those ringbills that we saw. Kind of have a lot heavier bills. And even though they're not close enough to see the actual ring, you can sort of tell them from that. This walk used to be considerably longer, but a storm a few years ago washed away much of the point, and so it'll be a little bit shorter over to the sort of bay side of the point. And here comes our blue jays back, streaming over, going back to the trees. I guess the lake proved a little much for them this time. They decided not to cross over to Canada, and now they're back. You can actually see across the lake to the land on the other side, and so it's a surprise to me that they don't try for it more often, but I don't know. Any sort of big body of water, birds just really don't like to cross, at least a lot of these day migrating birds. Here's two more red-breasted mergansers heading into a flock. I think we'll see quite a few red-breasted mergansers as we walk. They're one of the most common ducks around at this time of year. If we're really paying attention, we might find some common mergansers out there with them, but we'll have to see. They're definitely a bird that is possible. As far as those ducks were out, I don't think we could have probably picked out a common within that flock, especially with this sort of early morning light, but it'll be something definitely worth keeping your eye out for as we take a walk. And we just kicked a shorebird off the beach. Looks like it's going around us. You can see that really shallow wing beat on that bird, and there's really only one thing that does that, which is a spotted sandpiper. It's pretty typical of them. A lot of the other shorebirds will have a little bit more of a up and down motion with their wings instead of that just really short stuttery flight. And there as it's landed, you can see it bob in its tail. That's another very characteristic spotted sandpiper thing to do. So there we go. We got our first shorebird. Hopefully not our last. Hopefully there'll be a piping plover in our future. But good to get started on something like a spotted sandpiper. Here we've got a loon going over. Very, very gray, light pale bird, very slim. So that's a red-throated loon. You can even sort of catch a little bit of that red on that throat, that sort of dark wine red. And here we have a bunch more birds, but there's our red-breasted mergansers. As I said, these tend to be pretty common here, so that is not a bird I wouldn't expect to see. And something else, and here's our other species of loon, common loon, flying past. You can see that one's a lot heavier looking, a lot bulkier. It's flying over the waterbird shack where they count waterbirds from. The researchers that are here every day, counting everything that goes by. Really nice waterbird data set of birds, like these ducks and loons and these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of red-breasted mergansers that they see every day. But yep, we will keep making our way to the point, which is just ahead. As I said, it's not even going to really feel much like a point. It's kind of just like a little rounded area of the beach, whereas it used to really go out and point. If you look at the old satellite images, it's pretty incredible how much of the beach was lost. Here we have a couple more shorebirds. Pretty tough view of them going by, but those are spotted sandpipers. You can see that little sort of white marking in the wing when they're a little bit closer. And although they aren't quite as stuttery when they fly as the last one was, they still have a little bit of that characteristic in their flight. But those are a little tougher than the last one to ID based on the looks that we got of them. Keep making our way around. At this point we have sort of passed the northernmost point of the point, and we are heading down the other side. And I just heard American pipit, so there must be some pipits down here on these rocks somewhere, but they can really, really blend in, so they're pretty tough to spot. And oh, there they went. But yeah, when I raised my binoculars I couldn't actually find them in the sky, but as always, when you raise your binoculars into the sky here, you're very likely to see some blue jays. And so there we have a few more blue jays. So hopefully we catch up with that pipit flock later. They moved down the beach in the direction that we're headed, so I think we have a chance to run into them again. So we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open for that. And there's another common loon, another really big bulky bird, and the second one right behind it. Very cool. The loon migration here is definitely another sort of spectacle. If you get a really big day that you can just sort of stand on the point and watch loons go by, and grebes especially in the fall, it's pretty impressive. But now we're in the area that the piping plovers breed. So you can see the rocky area behind the signs, and this area that's roped off is their breeding area. So we're not allowed to walk in there, but it is still okay to walk right along the beach. Right where on the water's edge, you know, if there were a nest there, it would get washed away anyways, and so they don't bother so much with that area. And here we do have a redneck grebe out there. You can even see a little bit of red of its neck, but more of that big white cheek patch. And of course, a couple red-breasted mergansers, always present. But yeah, so we're fine to walk right along the beach, but if we would walk inside a little bit, we would definitely be in the piping plover area, and that wouldn't be allowed. And here we have our first plover, but it's not the one that we were looking for. It's a lot darker than the piping plover would be on the back, and that's a semi-palmated plover, the closer bird. And the further bird is a sanderling. And so they're right along the beach here, but as we walk up, they're very likely to sort of move into that piping plover area and kind of settle into the rocks. A lot of birds will do that and sort of hide as you walk along the beach, and so you really don't bother them too much. Once you're past, they just go right back to what they were doing. But right now, we've got a big Caspian tern going by. Really big, heavy tern, really big bill, and that sort of blocky tail. Something like a common tern that could be around would be a lot more slender and with a longer forked tail that might just look like a point, depending on how it's holding it as it would fly by. Got a little bit more movement up there on the beach. I think we might have it here. And sure enough, there's our piping plover. Not showing us the best look right now, just looking at its back, which you can see is basically the same color as the sand, which is a pretty good camouflage mechanism. But yeah, it's got that very, very pale back, unlike that much browner back of the semi-palmated sandpiper. And so yeah, piping plover. And then there behind it is an American crow settling on the beach. These crows would actually be a nest predator of the piping plover. And so the piping plover monitors, when they are watching the nest, will actually put a little cage around the nest once they lay their first couple eggs. And the piping plovers can go in and out of that cage, but it protects it from stuff like raccoons or that crow, and will keep predators off these birds, because these birds are actually an endangered species. The Atlantic subspecies of piping plover is actually doing much better in recent years, but this Great Lakes population is still really struggling. So there's not too many of these birds around. You can see one of those birds doesn't really look like it has bands on it, the one that's running towards that log right now. But the other one does have some bands on it, and that's part of how they keep track of the individual birds, see who's mating with who's being successful, who's coming back every year, and they can see the birds without having to catch them again, that they know exactly who they are. So you can see that bird there. If it comes out of those rocks, you might be able to see it's got some nice little color bands on its legs, and no other bird has that same color pattern. And so the researchers and the monitors, as they sort of watch their success of their nests, will know exactly which bird this is and can sort of track it over time. Now, this bird seems to be a little less nervous now that we've been standing still for a little bit. It's come back out onto the beach, and it's sort of starting to make its way towards us. Now, that's one thing that you can sort of do here. If the piping plovers see enough people on the beach, there's a lot of people that come out and use these beaches that aren't birders, that are just out to enjoy the lake. And so they're pretty used to people. So a lot of times if you're still and quiet, and especially if you crouch down, they'll come relatively close to you. And this bird seems like it might do that now. So we'll watch it sort of as it approaches and see how close it'll be willing to get. And so we'll keep real quiet here and see if it comes all the way in. Oop, there it took off, and it went right around us and landed on the beach. As I said, they can come quite close sometimes. They really don't have a huge fear of people. We do our best to stay really still and not disturb them as much as we can. But yeah, they'll sometimes come right to you. Oh, and a couple more shorebirds. Oh, and our pipits down there on the beach. There's two willets that just took off, but there's also a marbled godwit, which is actually a relatively uncommon shorebird around here. So that's pretty neat to see. Now, let's see if we can't catch those willets in flight going by. And there they are. And you can see that really, really distinctive wing pattern in their wings. There's no other shorebirds that have that really nice black and white pattern, so seeing that even in flight is a pretty easy way to identify them. Very, very cool birds, probably heading north. Let's see down here on the beach. There wasn't anything. I think that marbled godwit took off, but I did notice these common loons, so we'll take a look at them. They're really, really spectacular in this breeding plumage. We've seen them in the non-breeding plumage before, but there's nothing quite like a breeding plumage loon. And if you're out here in the evening or even at night, a lot of times they'll call from out here on the lake, and you can hear that sort of haunting loon vocalization that is so magical and feels so much like the North Woods. It's really, really something. A little less magical, but we have some more American herring gulls. These ones you can see a little bit better, see that sort of plain bill without the stripe on it. But yeah, it looks like everything else moved off the beach. I don't see the pipits anymore either, and so maybe they kept moving on. We'll have to see once we get down there a little further. Maybe they are still down there somewhere that we just can't see. And here's a spotted sandpiper. And it's doing exactly what I said the shorebirds do sometimes, where, you know, when they see you coming, they'll leave the edge of the water where they're foraging, and they sort of go into those rocks and just sit down real low. And so sometimes you can just walk right past stuff and not even really realize it's there because it's just sort of hidden down in. Sort of chase those gulls off, unfortunately. They'll have to find somewhere else to roost, but we'll keep walking along here. But there's something moving in the rocks here. And here we have our third species of plover, although a lot of people don't really think of this one quite as a plover because it's called a killdeer, based on the call that it makes, which sounds like killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. And it's more often in sort of open areas than right on a shoreline or on the mudflats, but they certainly in migration spend some time there. But that one will have a double band if you'd see it well, instead of a single band like the semi-palmated and the piping plover. And there you can hear that call. And there's some movement down near the shore, and I think we've found our American pipits. They're pretty tough to spot in there unless they're moving, but definitely some pipits there, and also another spotted sandpiper. So very cool. All right, so we've pretty much done what we were going to do on the beach, and really did quite well. We saw most of the ducks and the loons and grebes that I thought we would, and actually had a decent number of shorebirds and got our piping plover. So that's amazing. But yeah, now we're gonna give up the beach for the forest, and we'll make our way down this little trail through this sort of beachy habitat and see what we can find in the forest. But before that, we do see some movement down here, and we have a mourning warbler. Nice big yellow warbler moving on the ground like they often do, but oftentimes they're more in cover rather than in the open like this. But it's got that sort of gray hood that goes all the way down onto the breast, and that's a pretty cool bird. And there's something else I caught a little bit of movement here, a little hidden there in the brush, but it looks like a LeConte sparrow actually. Very, very pretty sparrow that usually you would see on marshy habitats in the North Woods, but here, you know, during migration they've got to put down somewhere, and so I guess that spot there is as good as any. It's definitely a bird that I would typically think of as marsh habitat. But I've actually even seen soras just walking around in this pine woods here, which always feels a little weird when I see it. But yeah, birds don't always stick with their habitats in migration. They'll put down just about anywhere, so definitely not impossible to see. And here we have another sparrow, a vesper sparrow, which is another pretty decent bird, really. It's got a little bit of white on the edge of the tail there. Very, very cool. So some good luck before we even get into the woods, so we'll hope that continues as we walk around. Just to our left is where they do a lot of the owl banding research here at Whitefish Point, but we will stay out of that area and work our way here more towards the right and get into the woods. There's a little bit of more movement on the ground over here, so we'll take a look at that. And here we have a nice Nashville warbler. Not entirely unlike the mourning, but a lot smaller. And if it turns, you'll see the throat is yellow. Yeah, there we go. See that nice yellow throat, which was different than the mourning warbler had with that full gray hood. There's another bird on the ground there, and It looks like a Tennessee warbler with green back and a little bit of a gray head. And it's too bad it's not in the same view as the other one, but Nashville and then Tennessee, the jokes write themselves there. All right, very, very good. Some nice warblers already. Let's see if we can't find this chipping sparrow that's singing. And there it is, right at the top of the tree. And of course, you can see quite a few blue jays flying in the back. But sitting up there, singing its heart out. This sparrow, unlike the last two that we've seen, is not a migrant. It actually breeds here. And so this one is probably on territory. Very nice. Alright, we'll keep making our way into the woods along these little narrow sandy trails. I saw a large bird flying here, but did miss it with the binoculars, so I couldn't say what it is, but gives us another good chance to look up and to see all of our blue jay friends still circling overhead. Pretty impressive. And we'll keep making our way along. Should be definitely some other migrants in the woods. It can be a little hit and miss, but it was nice south winds last night, so there should still be some things around. We might have something there. And sure enough, it's another warbler. Nice Wilson's warbler. It's pretty fast, but you could catch that little black cap on it, which is pretty diagnostic. And then something else here. Looks like a nice Cape May warbler. Very pretty yellow with that chestnut sort of rusty cheek. Most of the time this is a bird that you would see in the trees, but on cold mornings like this morning, and it is quite cold, a lot of times the insects are actually more down on the ground. And so it's down with this oven bird that would probably be on the ground either way. But this is a really nice look at an oven bird. You can see that nice rusty crown, nice streaks on the side, walking along the ground like they often do. But yeah, Cape May warbler, not typically a bird you'd expect on the ground. But yeah, it is very chilly this morning, which is why I have my gloves on. And so all the insect activity is going to be very, very low to the ground. And sort of as the day goes on, probably the insects will sort of move up into the bushes and trees, and the warblers will probably follow them. But yeah, it's not uncommon here in migration to see birds that you would expect to be in trees on the ground. And so it's definitely a different angle and definitely makes it fun. Definitely part of the fun of birding here. Here's a really nice look at a rose-breasted grosbeak that has found a little patch of sunlight to sit in. So that is another migrant and another very, very cool bird. We had one at the feeder earlier as well, so it seems like maybe there's a few of them around. Definitely a bird that's very fun to see and that we heard but didn't see last time, and so it is fun to pick that one up because they're very, very beautiful. Got another bird here, and another warbler on the ground. Nice male black-throated blue. Got really poor looks at a female last time, so getting a male is really nice. Another warblers on the ground behind. We got a female Blackburnian warbler, not quite as bright, but still very pretty. With another Cape May behind them. I guess if rose-breasted grosbeaks are having a good migration night last night, I guess Cape Mays are as well. Seems to be a couple of them around. Alright, another warbler here. And another Cape May warbler. A little bit more where you would expect a Cape May, up in a tree. But this one looks like it's found some flowers. Cape May warblers will actually drink nectar, and so it could be getting that out of those flowers, or it also could be just looking for insects that are also attracted to the flowers. So not sure exactly what it's looking for there, but really could be either. Got another warbler here in the trees. And there's a nice American redstart. It looks like a female. Got that really long, slender redstart body. And you can see that yellow patches in the tail where the orange would be on a male. Duck under this log here, and then see something else. And another warbler, a nice black and white warbler. It's one we missed last time, so good to pick that one up. Really, really pretty. Almost moves like a nuthatch more than a warbler, which makes it sort of unique. There's not really any other warblers that move and kind of scramble on the sides of trunks up and down the way black and white does. So they're a pretty fun one. They also nest underground, which is kind of a weird thing as well. Not most warblers are nesting in trees or maybe on the ground, but they'll actually go under roots, which is pretty cool. Nice palm warbler here. That one's kind of a nice yellowy one. It's still got that gray belly of a western subspecies palm warbler, not the yellows that we would see on the other side of the Appalachians. But that one was still pretty bright. And here's probably a second palm warbler. This one is definitely a little bit more gray, but you can still see that little bit of yellow in the undertail and on the throat. Nice little mixed flock in this area right on the edge. They do move on edges oftentimes when they're migrating, these warblers. And yeah, here's another really remarkable looking Cape May warbler down on the ground. Super, super pretty. Definitely seeing them on the ground is kind of cool, especially when you normally see them really high up in the tree like we did on the last time we were out. And here we'll go left eventually, but I did hear those evening grosbeaks again, and we were looking for a better view after the ones this morning, so let's see if we can get it. And there's a nice female. The males are probably a little bit more spectacular between the two, but this female is very nice. And you can see in the summer they get really pea green bills, and her bill isn't quite as green as it will get, but it had a little bit of green to it. So they're always fun to see this late into the spring because you get to see that. And oftentimes, you know, we're used to seeing evening grosbeaks in the winter or in the fall, and you don't get to see that pea green bill. So definitely special. Even though maybe of the two, I would have probably preferred to see the male, but they took off before we could get a better look. So female will have to do. Here's a red-winged blackbird sitting at the top of the tree. It's right over the feeders, and so I suspect it's really there for the feeders, but it's putting on a few songs. You can hear a red squirrel. Hopefully that'll be at the feeders as well. It would be nice to get a look at that guy. Got quite a few blue jays coming over. You could hear that a little bit of that whooshing sound when they come down, which is definitely one of my favorite sounds in nature. It's very, very cool. Pine siskin calling as well. Hopefully that's another thing that'll be at the feeders. We'll have to see once we get up there. Oh, a whimbrel calling. See if we can't get a look at that. It's probably flying over. And yeah, sure enough, there it is. You can really see the curve of the bill on that one. Very, very cool shorebird. Blue jays are kind of getting pretty excited here. Could be the whimbrel, but it sounds more like there's a raptor, and sure enough, there's a Cooper's hawk. Sharpshin hawk is definitely possible here, but that one was a Cooper's. You could see that really large neck extension, whereas a Sharpshin would sit right down on the shoulders. And that probably has scared away a lot of the birds. If there was pine siskins around, my guess is they would have taken off. But at least our little red squirrel is still here, looking very cute. A little ball of anger usually. More often than not, you hear them as we've been hearing them, just sort of chattering at you from the bushes. And looks like another beautiful rose-breasted grosbeak has stuck around. This one's got a few of its winter feathers still in the cap, so its head's not completely black, but still really nice red on the breast, that nice rose breast that it gets its name from. On here it's kind of fun. So here we have the rose-breasted grosbeak we just looked at. And if we look a little bit over to the right, we have a rose-breasted grosbeak sitting just a little bit above it and to the right. And then if we keep moving up, we've got another nice male rose-breasted grosbeak. So yeah, I would definitely say they had a good migration night last night, which is great for us because I love seeing them. And there, for really quick, there goes a merlin just whipping past. Really sort of direct flight and really sort of staccato wing flaps, unlike a kestrel, and a little too small for a peregrine. But I think that's probably as good a place as any to end on. So we'll do the walk summary. We had 50 species of birds with 1 species of mammal. We walked about a mile in an hour and 35 minutes. And of course we saw our target bird, Piping Plover. Now here's our full species list. And for anything that has an HO, that's a herd-only species. And for anything with an N, that's a new species for our virtual birding life list. And finally, for S, that indicates something that we've heard previously, but saw for the first time today. Now, as I often do, I will pick a bird of the day, which could be our target bird, but today I am going with the bird that just popped on the screen, blue jay. I absolutely love those blue jay flocks. I think they're really, really spectacular, and they are probably the thing that impresses me most when I'm at Whitefish Point, especially in the spring when they're most numerous. And so I think I'm gonna have to go with that. It's a common bird, but I have found as I sort of progress in my birding career that sometimes common birds in massive numbers mean more to me than a rare bird that's, just one. So yeah, I think blue jay is my bird of the day. Finally, we have our virtual birding life list, and we're up to 164 species of birds with 21 new ones today, 7 species of mammals with our red squirrel, and then 2 species each of amphibians and reptiles. Now, I did mention that I worked with the owl research program here at Whitefish Point before, which is being run currently by the Friends of Whitefish Point. It's a really amazing organization, and they're relatively new, so definitely check them out if you get the chance. Last, I've got a little bit of bonus footage for you here of the piping plover that I took the next day. They were out on the beach doing a lot of their breeding displays, like this flight display, and then after that I'll show you some of the displays on the ground. And it's pretty cool, so I hope you enjoy it, but I'll leave you to that. So thanks for coming on this bird walk with me today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and happy birding!